In the New Testament, in Luke chapter 15, you know that chapter, there is the parable of the lost sheep, right? And remember, the good shepherd, he leaves the 99 sheep and he goes out to find the one lost sheep, and he rescues the lost sheep, right? And the reason he goes out to find the one lost sheep is because it's lost. It wandered off on it. It wasn't intentional. It just went astray and wandered off and got lost. Well, also in Luke chapter 15 is the parable of the prodigal son. The prodigal son rebelled. The prodigal son essentially said to his father, I don't want to live under your roof. I don't want to live according to your rules. I don't want to be under your authority. And the prodigal son leaves. And the father doesn't go after him. The father doesn't pursue him. The father allows him to go off on his own. He lets him alone to pursue his sin and suffer the consequences of his own choices. That's the wrath of abandonment. That's the wrath of abandonment. And of course, when the son came to the end of himself and returned home to his father, his father welcomed him home with open arms and received him back into the family. The Lord may abandon us to our sin, but we can always come back to Him. At any time, we can come back to Him, and He receives us with open arms. But if we're stubborn and we're hard-hearted and we want to go our own way and we don't want to live according to God's commands and we don't want to live according to God's ways, there's a point where God will say, okay. And He'll let us alone to pursue our sin and experience the consequences of our choices. In Romans chapter 1, we see this illustrated and described for us, this wrath of abandonment. In Romans chapter 1, verse 18, it says, the wrath of God is revealed against those who suppress the truth by their wickedness. So the wrath of God is revealed against those who suppress the truth. They know the truth about God, but they suppress the truth. That's what the religious leaders did. They suppressed the truth that was revealed to them about Jesus Christ. They knew that He was the promised Messiah, but they rejected Him. In Romans chapter 1, God's wrath against those who suppress the truth is described, and it says in Romans chapter 1, verse 24, so God gave them up. They suppressed the truth and suppressed the truth and suppressed the truth, and there was a point where God finally just gave them up. God abandoned them to their sin. The New Living Translation says God abandoned them to do whatever shameful thing their hearts desired. Then, verse 27 says, and they received in themselves the penalty which was due. That resulted from their sinful choices. In other words, God just kind of gave them up to pursue their sin, and they suffered the natural consequences of their choices. That's the wrath of abandonment. And here, Jesus says of the scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem, He says to His disciples, just let them alone. They are blind leaders of the blind, and if the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a ditch. That will be the consequence of their rejection of Jesus Christ. They will end up in the ditch along with those who follow them. That's where it's going to end. Then Peter answered and said to him, explain this parable to us. Hey, Pete, it's not a parable. This is really what's going to happen. And so Jesus said, are you also still without understanding? Do you not yet understand that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and is eliminated? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness or lying, and blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. Now, did you notice in that list in verse 19, he's got evil thoughts, he's got lying, in a list with murder and adultery and fornication. We wouldn't put those things in the same list, would we? Jesus does. How often have you heard someone say, well, I'm a pretty good person, I've never murdered anyone, I've never cheated on my spouse. All right, well, have you ever told a lie? Have you ever had an evil thought? Well, that's different. Not to Jesus. He puts them all on the same list. He says in verse 20, these are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile a man. You may get COVID if you eat with unwashed hands, but you're not defiling yourself. Now, what Jesus says here is so important. Please tune in to what he's saying. He's saying moral defilement doesn't come from the outside. It comes from the inside. Defilement is an internal matter. It's not an external matter. Your unwashed hands do not defile you. Your sinful heart does. Sin and wickedness proceed from the heart. Look at verse 19 again. For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These all come out of the heart. Jeremiah 17:9 says the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Proverbs 4:23 says, keep your heart or guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life. Sin and defilement proceed out of the heart.